Many Pokémon trainers ask the question, is it worth it to buy a World Championship deck? Replicas of the 60-card decks used by the World Champions of each year, World Championship decks are quite possibly the strongest, most finely tuned and competitive decks from their respective standard. However, due to their silver border and commemorative card back, the cards within them are not tournament legal and can only be played with friends in casual games. So are these decks a good deal for new players? Casual players? What about enfranchised and otherwise experienced trainers? Or are they not worth your Poké dollars? Let's take a look. A World Championship deck contains the following: 1 World Championship booklet, 1 60-card champion deck, a special commemorative World Championships pin, and a World Championship, begin quotes, deck box, end quotes, which is in reality a small cardboard box that won't hold these cards if you sleeve them. Luckily, World Championship sleeves are sold separately, and they're not very good. There are 2 key things to understand about these championship decks, and financial value is not one of them. First, these are the exact decks played by the world champions of the Pokémon TCG. Card for card, the decks these 4 champions piloted to greatness. Down to the letter, not missing a card. And second, all of these cards are silver bordered and not tournament legal. What exactly does that mean? In order to build these decks on your own, you'd need to spend anywhere between $1 and even $200+ to buy the individual cards needed to build these decks. So the only way to reasonably provide players with complete copies of the winning tournament decks is to offer high-quality proxies of those cards. That's what you are buying here, proxies, replicas. The back is distinctly different, and just because players do use sleeves, the fronts are silver border, so there is no mistaking these for the real article. So the question is why? Why buy these if the cards can't be played at Pokémon events and tournaments? Why spend money on cards you can't play at official events? Well, the first answer to that is glaringly obvious, because the majority of players don't play at official events or in tournaments. And so who cares if you use these if you're just playing with friends? So you're sitting around your kitchen table with a friend or two. None of you are ever going to play in a tournament or at a local game store, and you not only want to play Pokémon, but play it at a high level of gameplay. Those intro decks aren't going to give you a great experience. Buying pack after pack to crack for cards is expensive and inefficient, and even buying the individual cards is still costly. That's where these come in. The decks of the pros at your fingertips. Casual player does not equal low skill level. But there's other uses for these decks besides just for fun. Uses that apply to both new and fully enfranchised players alike. These decks are a test, a way to see how you do playing with some of the best decks of the year. These are also a tool meant to teach you how some of the best players in the world build their decks. Study these, pilot them, dissect them, and learn from them. Many other TCGs offer their version of this, such as Magic the Gathering, which for years offered championship decks until discontinuing them. In many ways, World Championship decks are the opposite of intro decks. In my review for intro decks, many experienced players commented that these decks have no use for anyone but the most introductory of player. The cards are seldom if ever powerful. The decks do not operate like an actual standard deck does, so you are getting no cards of value, nor are you getting any realistic gameplay experience. I acknowledged these issues, but countered that brand new players, either to Pokémon or just to TCGs, benefit from the fact intro decks do not function like a normal standard deck, since normal standard decks usually build up quickly to an unstoppable knockout blow. The slower nature of Pokémon intro decks, therefore, aids in learning and progressing towards a basic standard deck. But what about players who are not brand new to Pokémon? Or even for new players of Pokémon TCG that have enough TCG experience that they don't need training wheels? I mean, an experienced and competitive Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone, or Hex player is going to take to Pokémon TCG like a fish takes to water. So why not sit down with a fully tuned deck. Well, that is what these championship decks are. In opposition to intro decks, championship decks are real standard decks, with 3 times, 4 times of their respective copies of a card finely tuned, and some of the best of the year as played by some of the best players in the game. I collect these every year, open them up, sleeve them up. They let me take down a little box of 4 decks, pull out a finely tuned and competitive deck that I did not spend any big bucks on, does not contain any real cards, and thus I don't have to worry about damaging or devaluing them. So my friends and I can just pull out these decks and play real PTCG, no training wheel decks, the real thing, but with what's not quite the real thing, if that makes any sense. It's fantastic. Yet the cards themselves are still the same quality as real ones. Many trainers ask, why not just print and proxy their own decks? And sure, you can, but these are printed on the same high-quality cardstock, vibrant colors, which adds to our overall experience and enjoyment when playing. It's the PTCG board game in a way, not for playing informal competitions, but fine-tuned for your living room and kitchen table. Alright, let's briefly talk financial value, because believe it or not, there is some here, but it operates a little differently than typical Pokémon cards. Many players collect these decks, and their unique once-a-year printing and limited availability can make older copies of both the decks and individual cards hard to find. Because these cards are high quality, essentially official proxies, printed on the same cardstock and with the same image quality as real cards, many players seek these as prized alternatives for personal use, especially the cards whose real versions have a high price tag. I'm looking at you, Shaman. The silver signature of each respective champ doesn't hurt either. I love little touches like that. In addition to all of this, the included online code grants you the sleeves and deck box of that deck's respective year. These are actually in very short supply and are hard to find online, especially for older years, and thus can fetch a modest price, for an online code anyway. Final thoughts? While not tournament legal, championship decks have many applications for new and established players alike. They can serve as a learning tool to experience and understand finely tuned competitive decks. They are a great and affordable way to play with some of the best standard decks of the year, without spending the price of those decks. In many ways, multiple copies of these are like a Pokémon TCG board game, something you can sleeve up and take down from the shelf to play with friends who may not even have standard decks of their own. Amazing product for anyone looking for high-level competitive play, but not looking to go down to official tournaments and events. Grade? A-. I really think these are excellent. I hope very much this video has been of some help to you. You can help me out by remembering to like, to share, to hit that subscribe button, or just by leaving a comment. Do you like the World Championship decks? What is it that appeals to you about them? Or do you feel these are not very effective? Let me know in the comments below. And this program was made possible thanks to a sponsorship from Card Kingdom, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. So thank you.